A contract is when I own a house and I want to get someone to rent my house. So what I say is, okay, if you do X, then I will let you live in my house. If you pay, X amount by the 5th of the month. And if you are late with this, then it's this payment. And no smoking and no pets. We know about the cat poop from last week. So I tell you, these are the criteria. If you abide by this, then you get to live here. If not, I kick you out. So I would say that a contract, agree with me, a contract is based on what? A contract is based on mutual distrust. It's based on the fact that I don't trust you to pay, so therefore I have to write in the stipulation, if you don't, I'm going to do this. And I don't trust you as the owner that you're going to let me live here, so I'm going to write it in there that if I pay, you can't kick me out. It's based on distrust. It's conditional. But is that marriage? It's conditional, based on distrust? That, yeah, I'm in it for life, as long as you do this. And as long as you cook, then I'm in it. But you don't cook, no, it's conditional. And I'm in it as long as you got hair. But once the hair goes, all bets off. Marriage is not conditional. Marriage is not as long as you make me happy. Marriage is not as long as you fulfill my needs. Marriage, listen to this one. This is the exact opposite of everything the world says, but trust me on this one. Marriage is not about selfish. Marriage is not about selfish. Marriage is not, I'm here to get my needs met. Go ahead, serve me, feed me, take care of me. That's not marriage. Marriage is, I'm here to serve. I'm here to meet your needs. And I hope that I've chosen someone who wants to meet my needs, same way I'm here to meet their needs. But marriage is not, I'm not getting what I wanted, so therefore all bets off. Marriage is not based on selfish. Nothing in Christianity is based on selfish. Marriage is not a contract. Marriage is a covenant. Difference between a covenant and contract? Covenant is not based on distrust. It's based on commitment. Mutual commitment. A covenant says, I'm in for life. And this is what I am promising that I'm going to do. For better or for worse, for sick or for poor, for rich or health or whatever it may be, I'm in, I'm all in, I will be, I'm talking about myself, I will be the husband that God has called me to be, regardless of who you are as my wife. And you wives, you say the same thing, I will be the wife that God has called me to be. I'm in. Remember we talked about this, that when it comes to the Orthodox wedding, we don't do vows to each other and, to have and to hold and to love and to pour and to whatever it may be. We don't do that. What we do is we stand in front of the altar and God makes a vow to us. He says, I make a covenant with you. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to unite you. I'm going to pour myself into you. I'm going to make you a little church. And we make a covenant to him and say, okay, and I'm going to love her as Christ loved the church. And I'm going to respect him as the church does to Christ. And I'm going to honor, I'm going to obey, I'm going to submit, I'm going to love, I'm going to wash the feet. Our vow, it's a covenant between us and God. In the Old Testament, okay, when they would do covenants with each other, do you know, maybe you've read this before, used to do weird things in the Old Testament. If two people were to make a covenant with each other, what would happen is that, okay, we make an agreement that, okay, I'll do this and you'll do this. It's a covenant. And then what they would do is they would take a bull or a cow or some kind of animal, and they would slice the animal up into parts, and they would put the parts of the animal, okay, on two sides and make like an aisle. And what would happen is they would put the bull on the sides or the cow or whatever, we agree, and then we would both walk up and down this aisle 7 times. And the understanding was that we promised to each other to do this. If anyone breaks the covenant, we're going to do to them like happened to those bulls. We're going to slice them and cut them up and down. Now, we don't do that anymore. But I thought about it. When you got married, you walked down an aisle. Now, they weren't necessarily bulls, but some of your friends were that ugly. So, we could put... You had some ugly friends who were up and down that aisle, and they were witnesses that you walked up that aisle. You stood in front of the altar. You made a covenant, and then you walked back down that aisle. Because that covenant is for life. There is no out clause when there's a covenant. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 10. St. Paul says, now to the married I command, yet not I but the Lord. Command. A wife is not to depart from her husband. But even if she does depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. And a husband is not to divorce his wife. Plain and simple, straightforward, no interpretation needed. Now you say, but I don't love her anymore. Even better, we'll make it even more passive. We're not in love anymore. We're not in love anymore. What's not in love anymore? I don't understand. Do you realize that getting divorced because you run out of love in a marriage is like selling a car because it ran out of gas? If you have a car and it runs out of gas, do you throw it away? Say, oh, it ran out of gas, time to get a new one. Is that what you do? What do you do? Not a trick question. You fill it up with gas. You invest in the car. You know that it is inevitable that the car is going to run out of gas. So you go to the gas station. Marriage is the same way. Marriage is inevitable. You're going to fight. You know you're going to, I always tell this to couples, by the way, when they get married. I say, you know you're going to have the first major fight of your life. You know where? On your honeymoon. And you on your honeymoon, okay, if you are engaged, trust me on this one, you're going to go on your honeymoon and you're going to have the biggest fight ever. And you're going to say to yourself, I married the wrong person. I married the wrong person. How could I marry someone who puts their socks there? Like, I couldn't imagine that's where he puts his socks. How could I marry someone who's so closed-minded, who doesn't understand me, who thinks this? You're going to be tempted to think that. But I'm telling you, that's part of marriage. Part of marriage is running out of gas and then investing in the marriage and filling up with the gas. Marriage isn't easy. There'll be times it's hard to love each other, but that's not a reason to give up. That's why, what was our first commitment? Remember, it was seek God. Why is seek God so important? Why you'll never be successful without seek God. You know why? Because there's going to be times, sorry to burst the bubble of anyone who's engaged or in that newlywed phase. There's going to be times where your spouse is unlovable. And everyone's agreeing. Let me say the other half of that. There's going to be times where you are unlovable. There are going to be times where you are going to be asked to love someone who's unlovable, who is difficult. And there's going to be times where that's going to be you. That's why seek God is number one. Because you know what God's specialty is? God's specialty is loving people who are unlovable. That's what he does that's like his job description. And that's why you and I are standing here today in his house. Because he specializes in loving difficult people. He specializes in loving people who don't deserve to be loved. So that's why if we are not connected with him, you got no shot. You got no shot at never quit unless you're doing the seeking God thing from the start. So number one, marriage is not a contract. I do this, you do this. But if you don't do this, then that's not marriage. Marriage is a covenant between me and God.